And the book says that whosoever dies like that is the cursed of Allah, Deuteronomy. Hence, beyond any shadow of a doubt, you could not have been the Messiah. And then they boasted of it. Of course, you know what they did not know. He did not die. He's coming back. But they don't accept that. So Allah created this being and programmed him to impersonate the Messiah. And since the Messiah is to rule the world, this is implicit in the hadith that he would be Hakim. Since he is to rule the world with a rule which cannot be rivaled by any other rule, that's a ruling state, Dajjal must also attempt to rule the world, impose his rule over the whole world. And only after he has done that can he declare from Jerusalem, I am the Messiah. And all the one-eyed will accept him. It is only then that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send back the true Messiah who will kill the false Messiah. This is so close now that children at school should live to see it. That's how close it is. How is he going to achieve this goal of ruling the world? That's not easy. No one has ever done it. Except Nabi Sulaiman alayhi salam, who made a dua to Allah, give me a state, give me a rule which cannot be rivaled in history by any other. In the hadith of Sahih Muslim, we learned about the island. Since you're all familiar, you've all looked at it already, we can move rapidly. That when he's released in a day like a year, which is stage one of his mission, it would be from that island that he would seek to achieve his goal of ruling the world from Jerusalem. And then he moved to stage two, which was a day like a month, and stage three, a day like a week. Since we have identified that he is going to be on an island, we had to ask the question, which island was it? And they were so keen to tell me in Singapore, it's Singapore. Because they told me Singapore is little Israel. We have to identify the island. Which island is it? We know, number one, that it is about 1 month's journey from the Arab world by sea. We know, number two, that it is an island with expertise in spying and espionage. We know, number three, that it is an island which conceals its true identity, because so much hair on the body of that beast, you could not tell which side was head and which side was tail. Okay, you remember that? We know, number four, that it is an island in which religion will eventually crumble, because the monastery is lying in ruins. So we will expect that one day in that island, churches are going to be sold to become bingo halls and restaurants. Huh? And of course, you know, Muslims become a masjid. Which island is it? You can hear them, you can see them shaking their heads now, those who came from Britain. You can see them shaking their heads now. This is where we have to go out of the Quran and out of the Hadith and do our homework. This is part of methodology. It is not only that the Quran explains itself, but more than that, you have to go outside of the Quran to understand the Quran. We see Britain with a mysterious relationship with the Holy Land. 1916. How come Britain enters into a treaty with Ibn Saud? We still have the text of the treaty up to this day. Britain and Ibn Saud, who is still in a place called Riyadh, which had a few camels, that's all, nothing else. And then in of course, a fellow called Lawrence of Arabia is at work. And of course, he must have his checkbook. And then in 1917, a British army defeats the Ottoman Islamic Empire army. And General Allenby enters into Jerusalem and declares, today the Crusades are over. Of course, he was wrong. The Crusades are still going on. And then from 1918 to 1948, Britain rules over the Holy Land as the mandate power. A mandate conferred by the League of Nations. You notice I'm speaking a little slower today? Can't have enough time today. And then in 1948, Britain functions as a midwife for the baby to be born. And since 1948, Britain continues to maintain her mysterious relationship with the Holy Land. The last one being a fellow, I don't know whether you've heard about him. He was looking for a job the other day. His name was Tony Blair. This led us to the conclusion that the island is Britain. But you don't have to accept our conclusion. No. Anyone is free to withhold acceptance. But if you say that we are wrong, and you want us to treat you seriously, then you must tell us what is right. And you must give us the evidence which supports your conclusion. Good. We notice that for the first time in modern history, a ruling state emerged, Britain. And the title that was used, this is Ambassador Adlan Rowe's subject now, the title that was used to describe that ruling state and the rule over the world was in Latin, called Pax Britannica. But when they taught us this subject in the classrooms of international politics, they didn't have the Bible with them, they didn't have the Quran with them. So they were unable to locate the emergence of Pax Britannica in any larger framework as part of a greater whole. We notice that Pax Britannica, or Britain's rule over the world, was not possible without something connected with money. Britain became the money lender of the world. Money lending in Europe was not possible. No, it was frowned upon. The Christian church rejected it. I have often referred to a book which was published in 1935 by a man named R.W. Tawney. Come on, Masabo, let's hear. What's the name of the book? MashaAllah, that's good. That's good. The British flag is flying here today. Religion and the Rise of Capitalism. by R.W. Tony, 1935. You're going to have to go on the internet for that. And in that book, this scholar meticulously records the strong opposition of Christian Europe, including Britain, to usury, to borrowing and lending money on interest. But something broke the back of Christendom, called the French Revolution. And after the French Revolution, the economy based on riba now emerged in Europe for the first time. Just about that time, something happened in Britain, and that was the birth of the Bank of England. And the Bank of England started this nonsense about printing paper. And you could come back with your paper and redeem your money, because your paper was a promissory note. Except that sometimes when you came back, the bank wouldn't have enough money to pay you, so then it busted. So this is not a new phenomenon. It was happening since then. I think shortly after the Bank of in Britain, England was established, maybe 3, 4, 5 years later, the first bust took place. Lots of people lost their money. Britain was involved in riba, both as a money lender and also the other form of riba, namely the monetary system of what you're going to use as money, paper as money. And Britain became fabulously wealthy. The scientific and technological revolution also gave to Britain military power that was unprecedented in the world. And there is a reference to that scientific and technological revolution in the donkey that flies. Aeronautical engineering. We have an engineer here with us. He said that the earth would deliver its treasures to Dajjal. Again, the scientific and technological revolution explains it. But when that big diamond was discovered in southern Africa in the late 19th century, they rushed to southern Africa, and then they started the mining. And if you go to Kimberley, you'll see it's something called a diamond vein. A diamond vein. They use the word vein. Way down in the bowel of the earth. You got to dig a hole big enough to put about 5 jumbo jets into that hole. And at the bottom of that hole, way down there, they reached the diamond vein. And they mined it, and at the side of the Kimberley big hole, there are wheelbarrows with plastic nuggets, piled up with plastic nuggets to show you how many diamonds came out of that big hole. Just these 5 wheelbarrows. That was the earth delivering its treasures to Dajjal. Why? Because of the scientific and technological revolution, which is still continuing. And they use every hook and every satanic crook, using an Englishman named Cecil John Rhodes. Sorry to mention it's an Englishman. To take fraudulent control over that treasure, giving the black African people alcohol as wages and so on, paying the wage laborers who were digging the hole in paper. You could only redeem that paper with us. So it was a rip-off. They were exploited. And all those diamonds were shipped to Europe, to the mastermind who was in charge of it, the Rothschilds.